It is 6 o'clock on June 7th, 2022, and the meeting is officially started.
The first portion of the agenda is going to be the swearing in. Each of you have your oaths in front of you. If you will stand and raise your right hand, we're actually going to do them all at the same time. So when it gets to the individual, if you'll just go down the line and individually state your names, and then we'll do the rest of it all together. So I, do solemnly swear, oh, I'll read it and you'll read it right after me. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the Manvel Zoning Board of Adjustment of the state of Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, and the charter and ordinances of this city. So help me God. Now, if each of you will just sign on the top line, and then I will pick those up after the meeting. Before we do the roll call, since we have just a couple new people on the board, if you could just do a quick introductory to introduce yourself to the board members, and then Ralph will call for the roll call. So Mr. Collins is not here this evening. So it'll start with Ron.
Okay, my name is Ron Keels. I've lived here in Manvel for 5 years, so just wanted to get involved.
My name's Ralph Lopez. I've lived in Manvel for 7 years, and I wouldn't want to live any other place. A lot of options, but this place is great.
I'm Mary Ann Atkinson. I have lived here for 15, 16 years. And again, I want to get involved, back involved, and I enjoy doing this kind of stuff.
Hi, everyone. Kim Bickham. I've lived in Manvel almost 6 years, and right off the bat, I just wanted to get involved and help make this community a better place.
So we're going to roll call. When we call your name, just say present. George Collins.
Not present.
Ronald Keels.
Present.
Mary Ann Atkinson.
Present.
Ralph Lopez, present. Kim Bickham.
Present.
Okay, and we're going to move to the first item of the agenda. It's a consideration and possible action to nominate and appoint a board chairman.
I nominate Ralph Lopez.
I'll second that nomination.
So Mary Ann Atkinson's made a motion to nominate Ralph Lopez as chairman, and Kim Bickham second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, or anyone nay? No nays? There's no one here. Okay, so we will note Ralph Lopez as chairman. The next item on the agenda is consideration and possible action to nominate and appoint a vice chairman.
I nominate Ronald Keels.
I'll second that.
I've never served on this board before, and I don't know if that limits it or not, but if somebody's been on the board before, I would certainly back them to be vice chairman.
Would that preclude him from being vice chairman? I mean, are you saying you don't want to do it?
No, I'd be glad to do it. I
Okay,
just,
okay.
Mr. Keels, can you run a meeting if Ralph's not here? It's not so much as public, as the, knowing the content, it's being the chair of the meeting means can you, get to a motion, direct, the proceedings pretty much.
yeah, I can do that. Tammy will back me up.
So, may I call you Mary Ann?
Yes.
Mary Ann made the motion to appoint Ronald Keels as the vice chairman. I back that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, so Ronald Keels will be vice chairman. The next item of business is we'll have a presentation and review by the city attorney and director of development services on the authority of the zoning and board of adjustments.
Well, let me introduce Jessica, I guess. And I don't know, I've just met Ron tonight, and I've known Mary Ann. I'm the city attorney, I'm Bobby, and I will be your counsel, your legal counsel. And probably the most important person at the city for all zoning and planning matters is Jessica, Director of Development Services. Her title is, I guess, long and involved, but the important part is she is being designated by the city council as the zoning official, which means she is cloaked with authority to make decisions that even the city manager, the mayor, myself don't get to make. Like a building official can make certain things on building and whether they're compliance, fire marshal, same thing. She's cloaked with authority to be the zoning official. So she is going to be not only presenting cases on behalf of the city, she will also be one that makes decisions from which an appeal can come to you. That's one of the three functions the Zoning Board of Adjustment does. You have appeals, you consider variances, and you consider special exceptions, which I like to tell people are kind of like variance lights. They're variances that if you have a preset of criteria, and if a person meets them, then they can get a special exception. And a lot of that has to do with, say, like handicap ramps, that sort of thing. If you don't allow structures in the side setback, but if you're handicapped and can prove it, we'll let you put a ramp for your handicapped access. And if you qualify with that particular criteria, we'll grant you your special exception. So there's three things, but the big ones are appeals and variances. And when she makes a determination, somebody that's aggrieved by that decision can appeal to you. And then any appeal from you guys goes actually to district court. It doesn't go to the city council, doesn't go to the city manager, and it's designed that way to take any politics out of it so that you can't lobby your city council member. This is all just about basically, the subject matter, and if they want to appeal further, then it's reviewed by a district court judge. So we've got a little PowerPoint that talks about the authority of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We call it ZBA for short. And Jessica's got a PowerPoint that we've kind of put together, and she can go over the basics and get in a little bit more specific on the variance, because the variance standard is kind of misunderstood. And we really need to know what is the standard you have to apply when a variance comes before you, because they're not guaranteed. It's actually a little bit difficult to meet the standard, but you have to know what that is, because if a judge is reviewing what you do, he's going to say, well, did the board know what the standard was? Did they follow it and apply it right? And that's what, if you're appealed on your decision, that would go to district court. So obviously you have to know what are the criteria, and we're going to go over it today. And then usually anytime you have a variance case before you, Jessica or I will go over it again, and you'll have it in writing, so you know what are the factors to apply, because I've seen where a zoning board of adjustment didn't apply the right factors and said things on the record which led the judge to believe they were considering other factors they weren't supposed to, and it got overturned on an appeal. Simple things like that. So I'll just turn it over to Jessica, and we'll start at the top. And if you have any questions, we'll be here to answer those for you too. But this should be a good first foray into your authority and what you're tasked to do.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rodriguez. As Bobby said, I'm the Director of Development Services and the zoning official. And you may wonder, how the heck have I been, given that title, and what qualifies me to be the zoning official? So a little bit on my background. I have a master's in urban and regional planning, specialization in land use and environment. So codes and regulations and zoning and all that boring stuff I have lived for quite a while. It's pretty interesting how boring I am, but I love it and I thrive in it. So that's my background in education, and I've been working on current planning now for getting on close to 20 years. Been in the profession. So I've worked in Louisiana a good bit of time, and I've spent now the bulk of my time here in Texas, and I love it. So I'll get on with the presentation for you guys. So the ZBA, just some facts about it. You all serve 2-year terms. You consist of 5 members, and you've been created by the city council. And as Bobby said, you are quasi-judicial body. So any appeals go straight to your district court. You're governed by the Texas Local Government Code. Just about everything you're going to do is governed by Texas Local Government Code. You have authority in 3 specific areas that Bobby mentioned and touched upon. Those are appeals from an administrative decision from the zoning ordinance, special exceptions, which I'll go into a little bit of detail, but we don't have any special exceptions that have been guided by City Council, and then variances with specific cases. So administrative appeals can be brought by any person who just basically disagrees with an administrative decision or a decision that's made by the zoning official. They'll bring that grievance to you, and you make that decision on where it lands, either if there'd be an agreement with the zoning official, a difference in an opinion, and what that would be. You were authorized for, subject matter, let's say for special, like I said, special exceptions, which we currently don't have. But in appropriate cases where council finds there are specific exceptions that are related to a specific item, they will provide that direction where you have a special exception. I've worked for a city once where there were some special exceptions specific to housing. So that ZBA worked with a lot of special exceptions, but we don't have any of those here. The second we'd let you know. Then also we have variances. Typically this is, if you are going to meet for your ZBA, this is what you're gonna meet on. I've really never seen an instance where we've had zoning officials sort of, challenge through this appeals process. So the bulk of any variance you're going to see is gonna be specifically for that, and it looks specifically at a piece of property that you're not that variance, that's the request, is not contrary to any public interest. You're not allowing any special conditions on the property that you wouldn't allow on another piece of property. You don't have any sort of hardship with that, and that you're basically within the spirit of the code, is how that outlines. I have a lot more information in here as it looks strictly in the code of what you need to look at to judge a variance. And here we are. So according to our criteria in our zoning ordinance, it's 3 things that you look at. And the first thing for a variance is that the granting of a variance is necessary to secure appropriate development of a parcel of land which differs from other parcels in the zone by being of such restricted area, shape, or slope that it cannot be appropriately developed without modification. There are instances where you maybe could have like a really odd shaped piece of property. Let's say you had maybe a triangular shaped piece of property, and it made it very difficult for somebody to have a building envelope within that triangle, because now I may be in my side setbacks, I may be in my front setback to reasonably be able to put a house there. Well, that could be a consideration because there's an odd shape to the land. In places, where there actually are hills and mountains and such, you may see a variance where there's only a small portion of that person's land that they could develop because now the slope of the land is just maybe too much. But it physically runs with some sort of oddity that's with that property. It could be an overburden of some sort of easement that's on that property that restricts somebody from being able to develop. That would also be a condition that runs with the land. The second, granting of the variance will not be material detrimental interest to other property or improvements in the neighborhood in which the subject property is located, nor impair an adequate supply of light or air to adjacent property, substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, increase the danger of fire, endanger the public health, safety, and well-being, or substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. That is exactly what it says here. If granting the variance, you're not going to cause any sort of, public welfare to somebody in that neighborhood, like you're infringing on their public welfare. It talks about here about adequate supply of light and air, so you can understand, perhaps if you had, a really tall building that was like, building up next to your property, and all of a sudden it's the afternoon, but you never know it's the afternoon because you never see the sun again. And that really kind of goes back to the roots of zoning and where zoning comes from, as far as being able to preserve light, fresh air, and quality of life. So that's what we're trying to preserve with number 2. Number 3, the variance desired will not be contrary to general purposes and intent of these regulations. So if in some case, you may have a variance that's before you where you have an accessory structure. Somebody wants to put their garage, within 5 feet or so of that setback, that's allowed. Well, in this case, if that variance is granted to say that it's 3 feet from that property line and not 5 feet, as it says in our ordinance, well, are you conferring rights with this property owner that the other neighbors, can't also enjoy that? So that's to consider. Are we being fair because everyone else is having to abide by these rules, but is this person getting, is this really like a hardship with that property, or maybe they just want their garage just a little bit closer to the property line? So we've provided an example for you of what would be a variance. So let's say somebody wants to put a pool in their backyard. So because of the configuration of the house and the physical characteristics of that lot, let's say we've got, an odd shaped lot here. The only place for the pool would require a 5-foot encroachment into a side yard. So if you had maybe some sort of, like, let's go back to like a triangular, shaped lot where they wouldn't be able to enjoy the use of that might be an example. A different example of what wouldn't be a variance is same example of somebody's wanting to put a pool in their backyard, but due to the size of the house and the lot, meaning their house might be a little, large, and then the lot might not be as large for what they want to do, so they weren't able to accommodate necessarily the pool size that they wanted. It's not that they can't do the pool, they just can't do the pool the size that they wanted, so you have to reduce it back. And you wouldn't believe how many times often this, comes up where somebody wants to maybe have a little bit bigger of a house, but maybe their lot's not big enough. Those aren't true variances, and that's when we unfortunately have to tell people, well, you might need to scale it back, 100 square feet or something like that to be able to fit within the confines. So with voting with the Zoning Board of Adjustment, you have to have 75% of your 5-member board, so that's 4 of you. You also need 4 votes with the 75%. In order to either that you'd pass it, and sometimes you can pass things and apply certain restrictions on it or certain conditions, or you can deny it. So there's 3 things. You can approve the variance as it's submitted before you in the application. You could approve it and say, well, you might be asking for A and B, but we won't approve C. But so that'll be written in there. And then you may say, well, we'll approve A and B, but we have these like special conditions of what we want to see. Or you can just say, no, this is not a true hardship or a variance request with that. But with the vote, you need 4 in the same direction of whichever way you're choosing to vote. Sure.
Just to reinforce kind of what Jessica said, one of the things that a lot of people are under a misunderstanding is that you can use the variance procedure to change your land use, what your zoning says that you're allowed to use your property for. So if you say you're in an area zone residential, hey, but I want to put in a liquor store or a game room or a shop. Well, Well, to do that, you have to go through what's called the rezoning process, where you actually have to go through and publish notice, go through Planning Development and Zoning Commission. There's a whole process for rezoning your property. You can't use the variance procedure to change the land use. It's more for a variance from the technical requirements, like the 5 foot, the setbacks are the classic one, because somebody's gonna say, well, look, I can't do what I want to do because the setback requirement, usually putting a pool, a barn, or something that would violate the setbacks. And the classic example, which I think was up there, was, if you have a pool, but you have a specific condition of your lot, something that you didn't create yourself. You bought the lot and it's a diamond-shaped lot, and really you need a few feet into the encroachment to do what you want to do. They come to the board and say, is that something that, you can do? And again, the key is you really are trying to keep the spirit of the ordinance. And it's something that really, we don't count it if it's something that's self-created. Like if you subdivide a piece of property from one big piece of property into two, and you have, say, 2/3 here is one lot, and you have a 1/3 of the property is the little lot, and now you want to put a pool on it, well, you created that situation by subdividing your lot unevenly to create a weird shape, to create something for a variance. That was something that we've seen before, where somebody would basically create the situation and then say, well, hey, now you got to give me a variance. Well, you created that. So that's not really righting the wrong or keeping the spirit of the ordinance. So again, our zoning ordinance actually, I think by the fact that the ZBA doesn't meet very often, I think the last time we met was, 2019? Is that something, or did we do one during COVID, maybe?
We did one during COVID where it was over the telephone.
Yeah.
But the last time we met in person, I think, was
But
2019.
I guess my point is, you're not called out very often at all, and I think that says a lot for our zoning ordinance, because I think it covers a lot of things well, it's applied well and evenly, and you're not going to get very many things for a variance unless, if somebody really just doesn't want to follow the rules or has a real situation with a condition of the property that they need some relief on. And I guess it's up to you to kind of figure that out. And then since 2021, the legislature changed the statute that you operate under. As it used to be, what is an unnecessary hardship? Well, there were some cases on point, but there was no definition. The cases would throw out some factors. Let's see what some of them were. Not self-imposed, personal in nature, related to the property for which the variance is sought, and not a financial hardship. That's the biggest thing that has changed. The legislature actually laid out 5, factors that you can consider. And for the first time ever, you can actually consider an economic hardship. If the cost of compliance with the zoning ordinance is greater than 50% of the appraised value of the structure, that's something that you can now consider, and that's a first. And there's some other factors too. If compliance would result in loss of your lot on which the structure is located of at least 25% of the area, you can consider that. If the structure is a non-conforming structure, that's another one. And there's a couple of other ones as well. So for the first time, you've got some factors laid out for you to consider, rather than what you see as kind of like a more conceptual in nature statement that you're supposed to apply. Now you have some factors that you can actually go by.
So this is a new factor, and anything that's going to be brought before you from staff will take into that account with the analysis, with the criteria.
Provide that to them.
And that will be provided to you on each case that you're going to get. With that, though, with this unnecessary hardship and how the state, has given parameters on how we define it, it's still just one piece of that puzzle. You still want to be with a variance request if it's, approved. It can't be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. So it's one factor to consider. So if you come up with, this is a calculation here where it isn't unnecessarily a financial hardship, it's one of the factors that you're considering within the other 3 factors that were given based on, is this detrimental to the public? A lot of times it's not anywhere near detrimental to the public. Is there an oddity, to shape with the property itself or some oddity with that? And then again, going back to the spirit of that ordinance, is it within the intent and the spirit of that ordinance? Can other people have the same thing on that property? So this is just something that'll be brought before you. Again, staff will do an analysis of the facts and bring it to you to be able to make a decision on anything that's brought before you.
And one more thing, once you've heard the case and you've deliberated, get whatever testimony you need or evidence that you might need to make your decision, you're going to make a decision, and it's going to end up with what's called written findings, just like if you were a judge. And the judge is going to sign an order and say, this is I find for the plaintiff, you're hereby ordered to blah, blah, blah. Well, you're going to do that as well, and I'm probably going to be helping you to draft that order. And one thing I like to stress, and this is a result of experience, is that what goes in that order is very, very important, because that's what gets appealed from. And that needs to be what it was based on. I'm going to go back to the saying the wrong thing can get everybody in trouble. Just in a city I represented before, a variance request, guy wanted to have a carport within the front yard setback. Said, hey, I need 5 foot, I want to put a carport. And instead of using the factors, it was denied. One of the board members on the record said, no, he's got that big old ugly truck and it's going to be out there in the front of the yard. And I just don't think that truck needs to, that's just ugly, and I'm just going to, So guess what? When the transcript went to the judge, he heard that and said, well, whether you think the truck's ugly or not, that's not a criteria. Overturned it, and, basically they won their appeal. So what's important to know is you're part legislative, you're part judicial, but a judge can't make you tell why you vote a certain way or not on the stand. It's a privilege, a legal privilege. Just like, a legislative body can't bring a judge before it and say, Judge, why did you rule a certain way? He doesn't have to tell you. He's got a judicial privilege. A judge can't get you before and say, why did you vote a certain way or not? The official findings is what you've got, Judge. But if you say something on the record, in the open, which is being recorded, they call it a skunk in the jury box. You can't put that smell back in. So I always caution you, please, read the standard, go by the standard, and be very careful what you say, because at the end of the day, we're putting together whatever decision we reach, we're going to put it together in accordance with the rules. If you say the wrong thing or have some opinion that's not germane to the thing, that can be a cause for appeal. And a lot of people in your situation never hear that. And I've seen where it can really, really bite you and the city in the butt by, doing that. So I was just always, and I caution city council too for the same reason. Be very careful about what you say, because you can say the wrong thing that can hurt the city or hurt the proceedings. That's just a piece of advice I'll give you as your attorney, because I've seen where that can directly come back and undo what's been trying to be done. So with that, we can move on to conflicts of interest. Because of your position, you're an official now, you have to be careful about voting on things that you have a conflict of interest on. And usually the two main things are voting on something that involves your employer or something you get at least 10% of your income from, and property that you own. You have at least $2,500, I think it was $2,500. If you own $2,500 worth of land or an interest in land, you obviously can't be voting on a variance that involves your own property. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious, but it can get kind of convoluted, Hey, I own like 1% with all my brothers and cousins of my grandpa's ranch. Well, does it worth $2,500? Yeah. Well, guess what? You can't vote on that. Same with the 10%, of your income. If you own shares in Exxon, you get 10% of your income every year from your shares in Exxon. Most people would probably say no, but there may be that person that says, you know what, I used to work for Exxon, I've got 100% of my stock in Exxon, and all my income is coming from Exxon. Guess what, you can't vote on Exxon's request for a variance to put in a headquarters and what they wanted. So just things to notice, that obviously it's common sense. If you have a conflict of interest, don't be voting. You have to recuse yourself, you have to file an affidavit with Tammy, and you can't even participate in the deliberations. You have to pretty much step down and not participate. Sir?
Since we need 4 yays or 4 nays, in the case of one of us, there's only 5, how does that work? Do we just not meet and then we postpone that?
As long as you have 4, you can meet, and 4 what we needed to do the variance or to hear a case. Now, it is a problem if you've got 2 people that have conflicts.
But so if there's 4 and we get 3, one way or the other, and the other, that's not the 4. Is that still the 75% rule of now the 4? Does that?
No, it's of the entire body, which means you're going to need 4 votes to approve something.
So and that's what I was asking. So if, let's say we get 3 nays and 1 yes, and because one of us wasn't able to meet, that individual.
They didn't get the 4 yeses, so whatever the applicant's applying for, they're not gonna win.
Okay.
They've got the burden to get their 4 votes. If they want a variance approved, they need 4 of you guys to say yes to the variance. If they want to appeal Jessica's interpretation, they need 4 of you to agree with their interpretation rather than Jessica's interpretation. So they've always got the burden to get those 4 votes. And that's why we always go with positive motions. Not to get into the weeds, but if you have a negative motion, a motion to deny, then it becomes complicated, because if you have a motion to deny, but you don't get the 4 votes for that, okay, well, it's not denied. That means it's approved, right? No. You need to get the 4 votes to approve. And then it gets more complicated. What if it's 2-2? Motion to deny, 2-2. Well, what happens next? So that's why we always go with the motion to approve, and that's one of the things that if you make a motion or a second, you don't have to vote for it. Making a motion and second means it comes before the body. It's like now it's active and you can vote on it. It comes before the governing body. And it happens all the time in council. They'll make a motion, they'll make a second to get it out there, and then everybody votes against it. But that's the proper way to do it, because the motion needs to be a positive motion. If you make a motion to deny, and I've had that where a developer, somebody made a motion to deny and it failed, and the developer's like, great, I've got my thing. Well, no, you haven't got your approval yet. You need 4 votes to approve. You didn't get your 4 votes. So that's why we'll probably coach you on that if that happens, but basically, anything, you may have a guy that's just got the worst case for a variance you've ever seen. The proper thing to do is saying, well, we'll make a motion to approve and a second, and then we'll take a vote to see how the board feels about it. But you still need the motion and the second. That doesn't mean you're for it. It just means you're for voting on it. And that's a subtle difference. So, did I leave out anything on that, Jessica? No, okay. Uh-huh. All right, I'll say a little bit about open meetings. The proceedings here are very official. You're going to be subject to the Open Meetings Act. There's going to be an agenda posted 72 hours ahead of time. And when you're here, you can only speak about what's on the agenda. And that also means that a quorum of the board can't speak about an item that comes before the board with each other outside of a public meeting. This is one of those sunshine law things that basically no more backdoor deals, no more phone calls, behind closed doors, no more, let's talk about this when nobody's looking. You have to do all of your deliberations here in a posted meeting. And that's tough for, especially a lot of people on their first time, because they'll see you in the supermarket, hey, this is great, I want to talk about that case that's coming up next week. Then they'll see somebody else at the donut shop the next morning, guess what? Then see somebody else at lunch. Well, they have what's called a walking quorum. Even though there's not 4 or 5 of you in a room together, all conniving and trying to get to a backdoor deal, you're daisy chaining. And that's the latest thing the Attorney General is going after people for. You can't daisy chain. They had the mayor of San Antonio, the night before a council meeting, would call up every one of the council members, talk about it. There's no quorum. It's just me and a council member. And council member number 2, council member number 3, council member number 4. I said, nope, go to jail. There are real criminal penalties with this. You can't daisy chain each other and have a walking quorum, they call it. So congratulations, guys. Your volunteer job actually has some danger in it that if you do the wrong thing, there are actually criminal penalties. Although, to be honest, in doing this for 26 years, I've never seen anybody that I've seen go to jail for this. Most DAs will just, you need training. You need to, but we have to say this and try to impress upon the fact that please don't talk about this with anyone else on the board except in a meeting. If you keep to that, you'll never get in trouble.
And I do encourage, if you have any question, no matter what it is, or just a clarification, send me an email, give me a call, and we can talk about it. We can have a meeting in person, or we can talk over the phone, whatever it is that you need.
Okay, and I think this might be one of the last things. Also, because you're a public official, records that you keep in connection with your appointment as an official are subject to the Public Information Act, which means citizens can request these documents, and with certain limited exceptions, we have to give them to them. And there are certain things, like if it's an attorney-client privilege document, like I give you a legal opinion, and the citizen wants that legal opinion that Mr. Lopez has on his computer or on his phone, then I'll file with the AG and said, no, this is one of those things that we don't have to give you because it's attorney-client privileged information. Things that may be, have certain, like citizen dates of birth. That's something we can't give up. People's social security numbers, driver's license information. There's a whole list of things that we can't give out, but typically you have to give it unless you can find one of these exceptions. So every email that you do, and this was getting a lot of people in trouble. I was seeing a DA go and impound a city council member's home computer because there was evidence that they were using it to create records and violate the Open Meetings Act. So when somebody makes an open records request for all the emails and text messages and they don't get a response with anything in there, the DA is like, oh, they're hiding something. We know there's emails. Went and fetched their computer to find out there were emails. They just were pretending, oh, they're on my home computer. They'll never know that I'm communicating from my home email address. So in response to that, and Tammy and I guess about 10 years ago, made sure everybody who's an official has a real city email address. And the reason is not really to make it just convenient for you, it's because everything that goes out through the city email goes to the city server. And if there's an open records request, our IT department can say, if somebody wants, I want every email that Kim has sent regarding on city business. Hopefully, if you've used 100% your city email address, all we have to do is go to IT and they can pull all of those emails and we can go through them, and whatever we have to give, we give. Whatever we don't, we don't. So please don't use your home computers, your home email addresses. Yeah. And that's the more difficult thing is text messages. How do you archive those? Does the city save those? And we have that problem with employees, with city council members. Is everybody going to say, hey, I can't talk to you over text because we're creating a public document. Please contact me through my city email address. That should be your response to anybody that's texting you. A developer could text you and say, hey, I've got this case. I want to tell you about why we should be able to put swimming pools all the way up to the very back fence line, blah, blah, blah. Text me. They get hold of your cell phone number to text. Please contact me through my city email address. And some people, Dan David would take a screenshot and send it to Tammy because we have to archive all of the records. We have a records retention requirement through state law. We have to hold on to city documents for a certain length of time for these open records requests. If somebody wants to make an open records request, we have to keep those documents. You can't, Enron shred them and say, oh, no, somebody might want this, let's shred this today. You can't, you have to keep them for, and luckily Tammy keeps up with all those schedules, because I could not tell you how many years you keep this, how many years you keep that. That's why we have Tammy who knows what she's doing. So again, please, if you can, make everybody use the city email address and avoid texting, because I've never seen it happen, but a DA, if they believe there's a violation of the Open Meetings Act, could subpoena your phones or your home equipment. Take it away, you might get it back, you might never get it back. But it's a huge inconvenience. And it's all designed, because somebody wasn't following the protocol. So again, thank you for your volunteerism. You've got these great rules now you have to follow. So, and I think that's all I had as far as the general governance stuff. Like I said, when we do variances, we'll probably give you, we definitely you'll get a memo from Jessica, and I think that usually comes with a recommendation too, yes. So that you'll know about the case, and you'll know applying the standard, which you can agree or disagree with, but you'll at least have something to follow, so you won't have to figure it all out cold. And then I'm here as your attorney if you have legal questions. And then make the decision, we turn that into a written finding, and then they have X amount of days to appeal that if they want to appeal it or not. And that's the process, and that's what you're here to do. So if you have any questions of Jessica,
I have a question. So when y'all give us this information, y'all will give us also the points that we need to look at. When you
standard, the
our
rule, yes, the
standard rule. So
standard.
y'all will get, all that will be in the same packet.
Yes, ma'am. So typically what I do in the packet that you'll get from me, you're going to have some maps in there, you're going to have some site photographs. And depending on, if you've got that variance, it's going to be an explanation of what the regulation is and then what the request is. And then based on the criteria, you'll get an explanation with that, just kind of how we're using that. And then from there, you'll get like just a formal recommendation based on the analysis of the criteria based on the request.
Ron, is this different than the other boards that you've been on? Is this like the Parks Board?
No one talks.
And I know we're not talking case by case, but what I always have done, and I think Tammy told me this one, was when we get that packet a couple days before or a week before that meeting, I personally just go out and look at go put the address in on your map and go out there, take a look and see. Because I think so we're citizens, right? And I always try to put myself, if I was in their shoes, with the person that's volunteering, because we are volunteering, spend their time to go out and take a look and just make sure that we're not missing anything. I know we see packets, we see pictures and all that, but we might miss something. And so I always just recommend driving by and taking a peek.
Okay.
Yep. Just don't all get in a car together.
Right.
Don't get a quorum and go.
No.
And don't say nothing about it.
Any more questions? So the next order of business is to discuss future meeting schedules. So
I'm good for any day except Monday.
That's city council, we have council meetings Mondays, yeah.
Council and P and Z, so they're, Mondays and Fridays, you can pretty much guarantee. The other is time. We did it at 6. Is 6 o'clock the earliest you guys can meet, or can y'all even meet earlier?
I'm available earlier, 5. As early as 5.
What time works for you? 6? 6.
That gives me time to get home.
So for Tuesdays or Wednesdays,
But she was, Mary Ann was saying, 6. 6 is the earliest she can be here.
okay, so no earlier than 6. Ron cannot do Thursday, so it'll probably be Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
So the time is 6:47 and the meeting is adjourned.